I have to start today's deep dive with something that has been driving me absolutely crazy.
Oh, yeah?
It's this paradox I think everyone is feeling. You open the news, and every week some massive company announces layoffs. 10,000 people here, 5,000 there. And the reason they give is always the same buzzword:
Efficiency.
AI-driven efficiency, every single time.
It is the narrative of the moment, isn't it?
It is. But then, and this is the part that's so baffling, you actually go and use the tools, the things they claim are replacing all these people. You
Right.
try the new customer service chat bot, and it just makes things up. It hallucinates facts, it writes broken code, or it gets stuck in this loop because it can't understand a simple question. It's like watching companies burn down the village to save money on firewood, but they haven't actually built a working heater yet.
That's a very vivid and honestly a pretty accurate way to describe the current friction.
So help me understand this. Are these executives seeing some secret data that we aren't? Or is this just a massive, expensive mistake that's going to blow up in their faces?
That is the core question we're tackling today. We're looking at a fascinating piece of research called AI in the Shorter Workweek, Balancing Automation and Employment. And to answer you directly, the source material suggests that yes, companies are jumping the gun.
Okay.
They are making a mistake. But the reason why they're doing it is much more complex and sort of structurally trapped than just bad judgment.
All right, let's unpack that. Because the mission for this deep dive isn't to figure out which chatbot is best. It's to understand this economic shockwave hitting the labor market. We're going to look at why companies are cutting staff prematurely, the hidden costs that are actually destroying their own products, and this is the part I'm really curious about, a radical economic fix the research proposes.
And just a little spoiler alert, the solution isn't to ban the robots or, stop using AI. It's to fundamentally change the idea of the work week itself.
We will definitely get to the work week, but first, this premature revolution. The source brings up a concept from economists Acemoglu and Restrepo called socio-automation. That phrase really stuck with me. It sounds like a Yelp review for a mediocre restaurant, not, a major economic theory.
It's deceptive, right? But it's a brilliant term.
Yeah.
We usually assume that if a company buys a robot or software to replace a person, it's because the tech is, transformative.
100 times faster or something.
Exactly. That's transformative automation. It creates so much new wealth that it actually generates demand for new kinds of jobs. But so automation is different. It's technology that's just good enough to replace a human worker, but not good enough to really boost productivity in a meaningful way.
So you fire the person, you install the software, and your output is what, the same?
Effectively the same. Or maybe it looks marginally better on a spreadsheet. But the problem is macroeconomic. You get the displacement, the lost jobs, without the big economic boom that historically helps absorb those workers into new roles.
You're just deleting jobs without creating value.
It's an economic trap.
And the source material is pretty harsh on the current state of AI. I think it calls it demonstrably incomplete.
It does.
It says these systems need constant oversight and context. So if the tech is so-so and it needs a human babysitter, why are companies so aggressive about firing people right now? Why not wait?
This is where we have to lead the engineering department and look at the psychology of the C-suite. The research identifies three main drivers. And honestly, none of them are about the technology actually being ready.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is simply executive incentives.
Follow the money.
Always. Executives are often paid based on quarterly performance, stock prices. If you announce a massive AI efficiency initiative and cut 10% of your headcount, your costs go down immediately on the balance sheet.
And the stock market loves the word efficiency.
The stock price pops, the executive hits their bonus target.
Even if 6 months later, the customer service department is collapsing because the chatbots are driving everyone crazy.
That is next year's problem. The reward is for the announcement and the immediate cut, not the long-term health of the company. And that leads right into the second factor, market pressure. Investors have poured billions into AI infrastructure. They want to see a return on that investment now.
They need a scalp. They need to show, look, we spent $1 billion on AI, but we saved $1 billion on salaries.
You got it. But the third factor is the one I find most, insidious. It's called managerial risk asymmetry.
That sounds like corporate speak for covering your tracks.
It basically is. I mean, put yourself in a manager's shoes. If you cut too many people and things get messy, you can blame the technology, say it's growing pains, and then hire expensive contractors to patch the holes.
That's seen as taking action.
Right. But if you keep the people,
Ah.
if you keep the staff and the stock price dips or you miss a margin target, you are accused of being inefficient, bloated, stuck in the past. It is personally safer for a manager's career to cut too deep than to cut too little.
That is terrifyingly logical. It's like selling your reliable car because you pre-ordered a self-driving one that won't be delivered for 2 years. So you're just left walking to work in the rain, but
Yeah.
hey, you saved on gas this month.
That is the perfect analogy. And just like walking when you need to be on the highway, there are real costs to this strategy. The source material calls this operational degradation.
And they brought receipts on this. This wasn't just theory. There was a specific stat from 2024 about customer service that made my jaw drop.
You're thinking of the Huang and Rust analysis. They looked at firms that cut headcount by more than 15% after deploying chatbots.
Yeah.
They found that customer churn, people canceling their service, it increased by 31%.
31%, that's huge. That is a third of your customers walking out the door because they hate your robot.
And complaint escalations went up 23%. The critical finding was that the cost of losing all those customers actually outweighed the money they saved on salaries.
So they literally burned money to look efficient.
Precisely. And it's not just customer service. There's the issue of knowledge erosion. The source cites the 2024 Amazon Web Services outage.
Right. That cost them something like $100 million in direct costs.
And the postmortem analysis partly attributed that outage to the loss of experienced infrastructure engineers during previous layoffs.
The people who knew where the digital bodies were buried.
Exactly. These were the people who held institutional memory. You can't just upload 20 years of how this weird legacy system works into an LLM overnight.
Right.
The AI might know the code syntax, but it doesn't know why the code was written that way to prevent some specific obscure bug. When you fire the humans who get the context, you lose the system's resilience.
There was another stat about innovation, too, something about patents.
Yes, that was from Brynjolfsson in 2023. Firms that cut R&D staff after implementing AI saw a 40% drop in patent output over the next 3 years.
Wow. So you just stop inventing things.
Well, it makes sense. If you get rid of the people doing the exploratory thinking, you stop exploring. And then there's the survivor effect on the people who are left. They aren't just doing their old jobs. Now they have to fix the AI's mistakes, too.
It sounds like a recipe for burnout. You're doing the work of two people, and one of those people is a robot that lies to you.
It just destroys morale.
Okay, so clearly the fire everyone and hope the AI figures it out strategy is a disaster. But the source material doesn't just complain, it offers solutions.
It does.
What are the better ways to handle this transition? Because surely we aren't just going to ignore the technology.
No, and the expert view is that this doesn't have to be a disaster. There are organizational solutions that work. One concept is procedural justice.
Which sounds like a legal term, but it's actually about fairness, right?
It is. The example given is Microsoft's deployment of their security copilot back in 2023. They had to make role changes, but they gave 6 months' notice. They maintained benefits during the transition. They were transparent.
So treating people like human beings.
It sounds so simple, but it makes a massive difference. It reduces the risk of lawsuits, protects the company's reputation, and crucially, it keeps morale up for the people who stay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you see your colleagues being treated like garbage, you're not going to be very motivated to help the company succeed.
Of course not. But what about changing the work itself? The source mentioned Kaiser Permanente.
This is a great example of work redesign or complementarity. Everyone thought AI would replace radiologists because AI is really good at spotting patterns in X-rays.
Right, finding the tumor or the image better than the human eye can?
But Kaiser didn't fire the radiologists. They redesigned the role. They let the AI handle the routine pattern recognition, the boring stuff, and they had the doctors focus on complex cases and, crucially, on consulting with patients.
So the doctors got to be more like...
Doctors.
Yes, they
Yeah.
got to do the human part. And the result was maintained employment and better diagnostic accuracy. It wasn't about replacement. It was about elevation.
I love that. It's using the tech to elevate the human, not remove them. There was one more example, AT&T and retraining. This was impressive. They created career pivot positions. These were temporary roles that allowed employees to work while they were being retrained for new jobs within the company.
Instead of just kicking them out the door.
And the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah.
68% of the participants got new jobs at equal or higher pay. In typical tech layoffs, that number is usually around 42%.
That's a massive difference.
Yeah.
So companies can do better if they want to. But here is where it gets really interesting. The source takes a turn.
A big one.
It says that even if every company acts like Microsoft or Kaiser, we are facing a structural problem that individual companies can't solve on their own. And the solution proposed is the shorter work week.
This is the core thesis of the research. We need to stop thinking of a shorter work week as a perk or lifestyle choice and start seeing it as essential economic infrastructure.
Infrastructure, like roads or bridges, that feels like a stretch. Why is a shorter work week infrastructure?
It comes down to what economists call the paradox of productivity. Think about it. If AI makes companies incredibly efficient and they fire half their staff, costs go down, production goes up, that sounds great for the business.
In theory, yes. Profit margins explode.
But if every company does that, you have mass unemployment.
Mhm.
And if you have mass unemployment, you have what's called demand contraction. No one has money to buy the cheaper goods that the AI is producing.
Right. The robots aren't buying the iPhones.
You destroy your own customer base. And this isn't a new idea. When we shifted from the 6-day work week to the 5-day work week in the early 20th century, it was partly driven by this logic.
I see.
Mechanization meant we could produce more, so we needed to ensure workers had leisure time and money to actually consume those products.
I think we forget that the 5-day work week isn't a law of physics. We just made it up.
We did. It was a policy choice to manage industrialization. Now we have AI, which is a new form of industrialization, and the argument is we need to update the policy to match the technology.
But does it work? I feel like managers hear 4-day work week and they just hear 20% less work getting done. I mean, I'd love a 3-day weekend, but won't the economy crash?
The evidence says otherwise. The source points to the public sector trial in Iceland, which ran from 2015 to 2019.
Okay.
They reduced hours by about 10%, with no loss in productivity, none. And employee well-being skyrocketed.
Okay, but that's the public sector. Governments aren't exactly known for ruthless efficiency. What about a business trying to make a profit?
Well, look at Perpetual Guardian. It's a private estate management firm in New Zealand. Highly competitive. They adopted a 4-day, 32-hour week.
With the same pay.
Same pay. Productivity held steady. Work-life balance scores improved by 24%. And turnover people quitting dropped significantly.
So how does that work mathematically? How do you work less and get the same amount done?
It forces efficiency. When you have less time, you cut out the nonsense.
Yeah.
Fewer useless meetings, less doom scrolling, more focused work. But structurally, it does something else. It distributes the productivity gains.
Walk me through that part.
Imagine a task that takes 10 people. AI comes in, makes them twice as fast. Option A is you fire 5 people and keep 5 working 40 hours. Now you have 5 unemployed people dragging down the economy.
Okay.
Option B is you keep all 10 people, but they work, say, 32 hours for the same pay.
So the benefit of the AI, the wealth it creates, is given back to the workers in the form of time?
Correct. It turns efficiency into collective leisure rather than unemployment. It keeps people employed, keeps money circulating, keeps the economy alive.
That sounds like a dream, but I have to play devil's advocate here. If I'm a CEO and I decide to do this, but my competitor down the street doesn't, won't they crush me? They'll have their staff grinding 60 hours a week while mine are at the beach.
You have just identified the prisoner's dilemma. An individual company struggles to do this alone because of that competitive disadvantage.
Right.
That is why the source material emphasizes that this has to be a matter of policy. The government has to set the floor.
Like the 35-hour work week in France?
Yes. The research mentions that the French policy created or preserved about 350,000 jobs. It wasn't perfect, but it showed that policy can shift labor demand.
And there was a German example too, right? Something called Kurzarbeit.
Kurzarbeit, or short work. This is a fascinating program. During crises like the financial crash, instead of firing people, companies reduce their hours. The government then steps in and subsidizes the lost wages.
So the worker keeps their job and most of their income, the company keeps its talent, and the government avoids mass unemployment lines.
And the source suggests adapting this for the AI transition. Instead of waiting for a crisis, use a similar mechanism to help transition the economy to shorter hours permanently.
Because if we don't, what happens?
This leads us to distributional equity. If we don't shorten the work week, the benefits of AI will concentrate almost entirely among capital owners, the people who own the bots, and a few high-skilled workers.
The rich get richer, and everyone else fights for the scraps.
And that leads to social instability. We've seen this movie before. High inequality usually leads to political volatility.
Yeah.
A shorter work week is a way to spread the wealth without necessarily, seizing assets. You're just spreading the benefit of the technology.
It's interesting to think about time as the currency of the future. Not UBI, but time.
It really is. It's about democratizing the efficiency.
So let's wrap this up. What are the big takeaways for our listener?
I think the main one is to be skeptical of the current narrative. When you hear about AI layoffs, recognize that this is often a short-term financial play, not a technological necessity.
The tech isn't there yet.
It isn't. And for any leaders listening, cutting too deep is expensive. Between last customers, lost knowledge, and innovation slowdowns, the efficiency might just be a mirage. There are better ways.
Procedural justice, retraining, redesigning roles.
Exactly. And the big picture. We need to stop fearing the robots taking our jobs and start asking how the robots can give us our time back. We have to look at work time reduction not as a holiday, but as a tool for economic stability.
It brings us to a bit of a crossroads, doesn't it?
It does. And here's the final thought I'd leave you with. We treat our power grids, our roads, our water systems as infrastructure that needs updating. The 40-hour work week was designed for a manufacturing economy in the 1930s. It is a piece of infrastructure that is nearly 100 years old.
And it might be rusting out.
It might be. If we don't update it for the age of AI, the system is going to break. But if we do, we could be looking at a future where technology actually delivers on its promise. Not just cheaper widgets, but a life with more time to actually live.
A future where we work to live, not live to work. I like the sound of that. Thanks for helping us unpack this massive topic.
My pleasure. It's an important one.
And thank you to you, the learner, for diving deep with us. We'll catch you on the next one.